it out this morning, please give yourself some additional time, and we'll get updates from Brian throughout. Now, I got to introduce Casey here. She's with us. She has been a co-host before, so a little bit behind the scenes here at Wake Up Mid-Missouri. First of all, you don't get invited to be a guest co-host unless we like you. That's the first rule.
There's and a backhanded compliment of the morning.
Because we call it the Wake Up Fam, and we feel like we like you guys and you like us. So if we like Casey, you're going to like her too. But more importantly, I think besides the fact that we just really like you, we're glad you joined us today because you've got so much Missouri political experience. You're with Lead Belt Strategies. You kind of opened your own fundraising firm. You do a lot of fundraising, but you have a history, especially when it comes to the state legislature. So can you tell people just a little bit about your background?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, guys. They like me so much that they invite me to be here at 6 a.m. So
on a snow day.
On a
snowy road.
You're so special.
I know. So I've got over a decade of experience in state level campaigns and politics and some federal campaigns thrown in the mix also, which we'll get to talk about one of those a little later today, I think. I have done every aspect of campaigns, started out, knocking doors during the summer on state Senate races in 2012 and have gone from there. It seems that there are not enough fundraisers in the state of Missouri. So I opened up my fundraising firm almost 3 years ago. It'll be 3 years in April, I think. And I still dabble in some consulting, too. So.
And today is the big fundraising deadline in Missouri. Folks will be filing their quarterly reports, so we will have those year-end cash-on-hand numbers. And I think the last time you were here, we talked about how important money in a political race can be and what folks might need to actually make the race a reality. So I know those numbers have been kind of trickling in. Some people file early, but I suspect we will get some full breakdowns later today.
I think that's right. Fingers crossed that the Missouri Ethics website doesn't have a crash with the overload today.
All right.
And Casey is from Bonne Terre, which is in southeast Missouri. I certainly have spent some time down there. And that town and that region exemplifies the problems that the Democrats have had. When I grew up, Casey knows this, that was a strong Union Democratic area. Bob Ward was the majority leader, Democrat. I mean, as powerful as they got in Jefferson City. You look at that region now, Casey, from top to bottom, it is Republican. And when I went down to Farmington this summer, Trump signs were everywhere, literally everywhere, in a lot of churches, too.
The Lead Belt, it exemplifies the modern Trump voter in my mind. When I grew up, I grew up in a working house family. My parents were not particularly political. They never missed a presidential election, but they voted for Clinton and they voted for Bush, both. And we have seen such a wave over, I think you can credit, it started with Obama, really, and then you credit Trump for kind of locking that in. And I can't imagine a scenario in which St. Francis County is predominantly voting blue anytime soon.
Not at all.
Well, we have more to cover when it comes to 2024. Casey, I know you are a Nikki Haley fan. She didn't have a great night. We've also
And earlier tonight, I called Donald Trump to tell him that I congratulated him on his victory. And now going forward, he will have my full endorsement for the presidency. And I think we're going to do the right thing for this country.
That is Vivek Ramaswamy last night closing. I think he went live on Twitter and live. I mean, he had a big reception there. I think it was as late as like 10:15. And I know he had some other things scheduled that he was planning on, I think, taking not a victory lap, but at least saying like, let's go. And then he canceled everything else and said, I'll be back at 10:15. He's officially dropped out, said he's going to actually travel with Trump into some of the next primary states and support him. Are we surprised?
I am surprised that he was so gracious and humble in his departure from the race. Any smart politician, though, at this point, if they see the writing on the wall, they will
bleep
their
or get
best
off the
bets
pot.
but their best bet for a future in Republican politics right now is to be pro-Trump if they can't make it on their own.
You know, and if he really wants that cabinet position, it got a little ticky-tack over the weekend between Trump and Ramaswamy, so he's turning that around real quick, but quicker than I thought he would.
What do you think about the speculation that he might be a VP pick?
I find that hard to believe.
I don't see it.
Everyone keeps talking about it's going to be a woman. It's going to be a woman. I have no clue. If I have said for years and years, if you are not one of the three people closest to Donald Trump and you say you know what he's going to do at any point in time, I just don't believe you.
I think you're exactly right. Now, John, you had an interesting take on Haley. Apparently, I thought Trump was going to win all the counties, but she's actually leading and won Johnson County. What's significant about Johnson County?
Johnson County is where Iowa City is, and that is the main campus of the Hawkeyes, University of Iowa. So it's kind of interesting. Yeah, it shows the whole state on the. If you look at the map, it's all Trump red, except for the one yellow county, and that's where Iowa City is, and that's Nikki Haley.
And I think what people thought was Vivek would really capture the younger voters, and Haley was supposed to do better amongst suburbanites, I think, but really it seems like maybe she did better among young folks.
I know all of my
yeah, go ahead.
All of my Gen Z friends were all about Vivek. I was not with them there, but.
Because you were, you said you liked Nikki Haley. You're like an old school Nikki Haley supporter, right?
Yeah, from way back in 2018.
Okay. But before but she really took some arrows here as of late. I mean, the Rand Paul stuff, and then everyone was kind of coming after her. Now she said some kind of weird stuff last night. I think she said, "Well, now it's clear," and we'll have this for you later. But now it's clear the race is down to 2 people. And everyone's like, but you came in third.
Finished third, yeah.
So what does that mean exactly? I mean, I think and so I'm also thinking, like, did you grab the wrong speech on the way up to the stage? Was this the speech that if you got second that you were supposed to give? Because that just doesn't make much sense. But even so, I think for her, coming in neck and neck with DeSantis, with a sitting governor who was supposed to be kind of like the chosen one, it's good. It's not a bad showing for her.
I agree. It's not a bad showing. And look, at the end of the day, she's still a serious contender as a female in a Republican presidential primary. And I think that's historic in itself.
Yeah, I think you're right. Well, on to Congress here briefly. Lloyd Austin has been released from the hospital. He was there for 2 weeks working from his hospital bed. He is going to be recovering at home for some time. And then also we got word that there was a fake 911 report of a fire at the White House on Monday. And so this whole swatting thing is really just getting out of control. Not only are our local schools closed, but we're also hearing federal offices in Washington, D.C. Some of snowstorm yesterday afternoon, but some of the roads inside the cities are still pretty covered. So if you're headed out this morning, make sure you give yourself a little bit of extra time. But what we like to do on Tuesdays is talk to our good friend, Chris Arps. And this morning, I just have one question for you, Chris. Are you all aboard the Trump train?
No.
No, really? After that big win last night?
I've always said that I was a Cruz supporter in 2016. I voted for.
So you're a
President
never
Trump.
Trumper.
I'm not a never Trumper. I'm not a never Trumper, but I will support him if he is the nominee, which it looks like he will be. But no, I'm not a. Let's put it this way: I'm not MAGA.
Okay, so are you extreme MAGA? Because I think that was Joe Biden's. Joe Biden, he said it's you and me, people, versus the extreme MAGA. So he wasn't talking about you. Maybe he was talking about Casey and me.
He may have been, no. But, I've always said, look, Donald Trump did an excellent job as president of the United States. The economy grew. We cut regulations. We gained respect in the world again. Our enemies feared us. I was all for that. It's the things that you hear all the time. It's just his temperament and that just turns me off. And the main thing that really bothers me the most about Donald Trump is he's not a loyal person. And in politics, all you have is your name and to be loyal. And he doesn't show much loyalty to people. And that's probably the biggest thing that I have against him.
Yeah. So what are your main takeaways? I mean, so overall, so knowing that about you and how you feel about Trump, waking up this morning, how are you feeling about the caucuses? Did someone outperform where you think they would? Were you disappointed maybe that DeSantis didn't beat Nikki Haley by more?
I think it was a foregone conclusion weeks ago, maybe months ago, that Donald Trump was going to dominate the Iowa caucus. He did much better than what the last Des Moines Register poll had him at 48. I think he got 56, 57% of the vote. So I'm not surprised that he did so well. Look, this race is over now. Ron DeSantis is going to skip New Hampshire and is going to go straight to South Carolina. We know that Trump's going to do reasonably, probably very, very well in South Carolina. Haley may do well in South Carolina. The race is basically over, and it's time to just prepare for the general election. It's going to be a very interesting election because both nominees, President Trump and President Biden, are not very well liked by the general population. So this is going to be a ground game, get out your vote election, because a lot of the both sides are not very enthusiastic. The general populace, is not very enthusiastic about them.
So any predictions then? We were kind of talking if Trump would, Vivek was very quick to join Trump's side. Any predictions as to who Trump might want to pick for his VP candidate?
I think the rumors that Nikki Haley may be his VP pick are crazy. Look, Donald Trump has always said that he's about loyalty and that he feels that anyone that ran against him for president is not loyal. DeSantis is not loyal. Nikki Haley is not loyal. So I don't think any of those two will be the pick. I think Vivek Ramaswamy, he was in the race to try to beat Donald Trump's VP. He may be on the top of the list. Last week, the president, Donald Trump, said that he had already picked his nominee, who it's going to be, just not going to reveal it yet.
I'm not surprised by that.
I think we can all agree on one thing. It won't be Mike Pence.
No, it will not.
Or Chris Christie.
But does Trump's
or Chris Christie.
But does his big win last night, does it have anything to say about what will happen in Missouri in 2024? As the candidates are, we've seen it for years now of people buddying up to Trump, and on Trump's birthday, there's all these photos of Missouri politicians, and it's almost like who's closer to, who can stand closer to him and who has the most pictures with him. I mean, do you think we're going to see that? And then if Trump is the nominee, is he really going to start, is he going to get into the endorsement game in state races?
Look, Donald Trump had many Missouri surrogates speaking on his behalf in Iowa. Former Senator Bob Onder was a surrogate for Trump in Iowa yesterday. Vivek Malik, who is running for treasurer, he was a surrogate for Donald Trump in Iowa yesterday, as was the Attorney General, Andrew Bailey. So I think a lot of our candidates here in Missouri are vying for that Trump endorsement, and I think that's why they were surrogates for him yesterday in Iowa.
Yeah, I saw Congressman Smith was there as well. We reached out to his folks, and although he's got a busy morning this morning, we're hoping to catch up with him about his time on the ground in Iowa. Well, Chris, you're there on the ground in St. Louis, and there have been, I mean, I always feel like there are crazy stories that come out of St. Louis, but this one, I think Columbia had a similar situation many years ago. Hannah, how long ago was the logo scandal?
Oh, man.
Was it like 10 years ago?
Something like that. It was before my time here.
But they had a big event, and they paid a lot of money, and they unveiled this thing, and people were like,
That's four dudes sitting in a hot tub.
It didn't go over well. And apparently, St. Louis County didn't learn from Columbia. And you had a big unveiling, last week? And it's basically like a wavy circle that you paid a whole lot of money for.
It was crazy. Look, I worked for St. Louis County. I worked for the election board. I worked for a councilman in the early 2000s. And so I saw the previous logo every day, and it was lame. I mean, it was basically something that looked like a high school student drew. It was like a wheelbarrow that was stuck in a field. So the field needed to be changed. It was very outdated. It was lame. But this thing was basically just, I don't know how you say it, fleur-de-lis, with a bunch of geometric design around it. It's very, very lame. It doesn't. The only part of it that really says St. Louis is the fleur-de-lis. But other than that, it doesn't say St. Louis County on it. Doesn't really give you an indication that this is our logo. And for Sam Page to spend $90,000 on this, it's lame. I mean, you and I could have went to an AI program and said, design me a St. Louis logo, and we would have paid $5 to own it legally, and boom, there you go.
This is
just a tremendous waste of money.
It went from looking like it was drawn by a high schooler to looking like it was drawn by like maybe a kindergartner.
I think
it was, and we had St. Louis County Councilman Mark Harder. He was in the office in the studio last week talking about this, and he actually left us a pin of the new logo, and it's even lamer seeing it in person.
Oh. Well, I mean, but I think St. Louis is at least recognizing a problem in that, they have a branding issue. They've had a lot of bad press and some bad actors. And so I think, a discussion of how do we kind of change people's perception and reinvigorate our city and our area and our county. I think that's a good discussion to have. I don't know that slapping lipstick on a pig, like slapping a new logo right on the front of it is the choice. I mean, in your mind, like what could St. Louis be doing, substantively, policy-wise, to really change the way people perceive it?
Well, I think the first thing is that the perception that St. Louis is crime-ridden, St. Louis County and St. Louis City. St. Louis City used to be known as where the majority of the crime is, North St. Louis, downtown. But probably over the last 5 or 6 years, St. Louis County's murder rate has increased dramatically. St. Louis County is not considered as safe as it once was. And look, we're sitting on hundreds of millions of dollars of RAM settlement money, and it's been sitting there for a year. They don't know what to do with it. We've had ideas to give part of that money to people that are poor. We've had ideas for other things. I think what they should do is take a big chunk of that money and hire police officers. I think the St. Louis Police Department is down by at least 300 officers. Jane Duker, who's a huge critic of the mayor, has said that there are some precincts in St. Louis where there aren't any police officers. So that's what needs to be addressed, is crime more than anything, to get people to come downtown, to come to the city.
Chris, we had not to change the subject, but to change the subject, had former State Senator Bob Onder on with us yesterday, and he indicated within a week he will say whether or not that he'll run for Congress. Do you think he'll run for that or stick with lieutenant governor, or what's going to happen with these two races with folks coming out of the woodwork?
Look, Senator Bob Onder was on our show yesterday. He was giving us a eyewitness update to what was going on in Iowa, and I pressed him on that. I asked him, do you want to make some news today and make an announcement? And he said that he was considering the 3rd congressional race. He hasn't made up his mind yet. But I think Senator Onder will probably run for Congress. You know, those seats don't come up very often, and when they do, you have to go for it. So I think he's just waiting his time to see maybe who's going to join the race. But I think Senator Onder will join the 3rd congressional race, and I'd have to say he's probably the front runner.
Well, we've been hearing from some of our mid-Missouri friends that they really want that Luke DeMeyer seat to be held by someone from mid-Missouri. But then, so are you hearing the same thing in St. Louis? Like, we've got to get this seat for, the St. Charles-ish county people, or St. Louis. How far does it go over, I guess?
In St. Charles County.
Yeah.
I mean, Senator Nick Shore, he's been one that's been talked about with that. Of course, Bob Onder. We have Travis Fitzwater, whose district is there in Jeff City, but it extends all the way to St. Charles County. A lot of people are talked about that. Of course, being here in St. Louis and having a relationship with Bob Onder in our station, I would love to see him win that seat. But I can understand the sentiments of those of you in mid-Missouri would like to have a person a little closer to home to represent you.
Well, and of course, we'll be talking to the only declared candidate so far for that race, Mary Elizabeth Coleman. Senator Coleman will be with us at 7:35. Chris, anything else we need to
let me say this. Let me say this. And I was saying that consider Senator Bob Onder the front runner. I think he's a good candidate. He's got a lot of experience, but he also has the ability to self-fund. He's put $500,000 of his own money into this race. His brother has put $500,000 into a PAC that's supporting him. So, money is the mother's milk of politics, as they say, and his ability to self-fund, I think, has to put him in as the front runner status.
I think you're right there that money does play a big role. And of course, we're having those fundraising numbers roll in this morning as it's a big, important deadline for candidates in Missouri. So we appreciate you joining us, Chris. Always good to talk with you. And of course, we will be catching up with you next Tuesday.
Thanks, guys. Stay warm.
You too. All right. Well, the one thing I think I'm most excited about if we get back President Trump is that lately the government has just been banning fun and humor, and I think Trump will have none of that. So we're going to talk about the government banning fun up I was looking forward to last night. It was like Christmas. I just was excited. We finally kicked it off. We do have other dates coming up for you, and I didn't get to those in the daily DC rundown. But of course, New Hampshire is January 23rd, South Carolina February 24th. So we've got a couple a ways.
And of course, the thing that you were excited about were that your kids got another snow day today, right?
Absolutely not excited at all. I'm also not excited. Folks were sending me these articles yesterday. I saw a bunch popping up, and I'm thinking, what is happening? And I thought, you know what? Trump would not let this slide. Now, one of these things is happening in Canada, so they have a lot going on that's wrong. But apparently, Toronto has banned tobogganing at 45 hills across the city. So not only are they saying there's no school, they're saying even if we cancel school, you can't go sledding because, it could be unsafe. You could hurt yourself, whatever.
That's the whole point.
Okay.
What the hell?
I actually have a great sledding horror story.
Oh, no. Yes.
I grew up, rural Missouri, outside of town. Had a snow day, had a friend over. This was probably in, I think, 7th grade. We had a huge hill. We're sledding down it, and we go off the road into the neighbor's yard. We lived on a gravel road with 4 other homes. Like, disclaimer, there was no traffic. Go off the road into the neighbor's yard. I bail out of the sled. She doesn't. Sticks her foot out to stop her from running into the neighbor's propane tank.
Oh.
Shattered her ankle.
Oh, no.
Ouch.
But I'm still not pro-government banning sledding.
And I think it's on like city parks because they don't want the liability of someone shattering their ankle. But like that's part of the fun is like getting together with your friends and going. I know, John, like the best, like Morrow Heights, I went to elementary school there and man, those hills are so amazing. And then Lincoln University has some of the best sledding hills.
I know when I grew up at Whiteman Air Force Base, we used to sled down the hill where they had the big giant multi-1,000-gallon jet fuel tanks and all, and it had like a 3-foot creek at the bottom of the hill that sometimes you didn't make it all the way across.
Oh, no.
But you could really get hurt there.
There was
There you
one
go.
snow day that my brother, he was pretty young. He might have been around kindergarten or first grade or so. He insisted that he was going for a bike ride on our gravel road on a snow day, and I think he might have made it to the end of the cul-de-sac before he wrecked his bike and came home crying.
Oh, poor thing. Well, kids are going to be kids. And I mean, the first snow day where you could see the grass. What was that, last Tuesday? There wasn't hardly any snow. And I come outside, I can't find the kids. They're on the side of the house and they have completely built a ramp of they have scooped all of the snow out of the side yard and tried to build a ramp so they can take their sled over a ramp. That never works. But they entertained themselves for a little bit so I could get some work done. So I appreciated it. But yeah, it seems like government is cracking down. Hopefully no one in the U.S. gets the same idea as the Canadians that are going to outlaw fun and outlaw sledding. But I guess we're also getting word that the Federal Highway Administration is saying that we've got to cut down and clamp down on messages that are humorous on electronic road signs. And if
Come on.
If you recall, I just gave Ashland PD and the Ashland folks winner of the week because they were putting on some fun signs around
And I really think this is time now for everybody, our country, to come together. We want to come together, whether...
I want to see the script of what he would have said had he have lost in Iowa. Like, we want to thank the great people of Iowa. Can you just imagine Trump going off like the people of Iowa are terrible,
awful human beings.
I could see him
you're taking your hints from Sleepy Joe.
I could see him just not giving a speech at all.
That could be the case, but of course Trump ran away with it last night. Huge night for Trump. Basically, the polling that was saying he was right at 50% was right on. Nikki Haley and DeSantis coming in second and third, with DeSantis just barely edging out Nikki Haley, and then Vivek is dropping out. I think to many people's surprise. I really thought he was in it for the long haul. I thought he wanted to sell more books and become more famous and do more social media stuff. So I was actually shocked that he folded so quickly, but obviously didn't have a great performance and worked pretty hard and spent quite a bit of money. So he is all in on Trump, as I think a lot of people are finding themselves this morning thinking that, Casey, in your mind, is it over?
I'm not going to say it's over yet.
Okay.
I'm not going to say it's over yet. I think we're getting pretty close to being able to call it. And I talk to a lot of folks who are involved in politics that say, you know what, at the end of the day, if Trump's our nominee, I'm going to support him. And that's kind of where I fall on this too.
I think I'm there too. All right, Brian, just a quick 30 seconds here on the weather for folks who were out and about yesterday. You saw kind of a pop-up snowstorm, and the roads still partly covered this morning. From my own personal experience, just in the city, the Highway 63 was looking really good this morning.
You know, you're right about kind of a pop-up, and the snow also lasted much longer than we thought. They originally thought 3 to 5. The National Weather Service, they do a fantastic job. They were a little off on this one, no question. That's not a criticism. They do a great job, but it was more officially. They said Columbia received 0.7 inches. I'm telling you, we probably got 1.5 inches, almost 2 inches in some spots. Ashland officially 1 inch. The good news of all this is that the wind chill will stop at about noon today. The wind chill warning, winds will shift to the west. That will help a little bit. Then we'll warm up, if there is such a thing, a little bit today, get some sunshine, get up into the 30s tomorrow, and then more snow on Thursday. Most schools, virtually all the schools in our listening area, are closed.
Yeah, and I know, John, I think there was an inch in Jefferson City. I know I was
give or take, I'd say.
I was in downtown about 4 o'clock yesterday, and I thought, I don't know that I want to slide down that hill to the highway, so I'm going to get on the road. But even just on my windshield, I was surprised at how quickly it started accumulating, but I guess that's due to the cold, huh?
Pretty much. I mean, it was just one of those kind of things where Brian was on the money. That's what we heard all day long, a trace to a little bit, and 3 to 5 in the afternoon. They kind of missed it a little, but now they're saying potential for another round of it late in the week.
Yeah. And it's just, I know it's frustrating for the schools, and it is,
and for the parents.
And for the parents. And it's also affected state legislature. The House missed a day last week, and that's something that Leader Patterson, because you have it's hard in Jefferson City with all the hills, so it affects a lot of people, and I'm hoping that we'll finally get a little sunshine today, melt some of this off.
And I think we were getting word that some of the federal offices would be closed in D.C. because, of course, they've got snow. My sister in Nashville, which they don't get much snow, I think they're north of 6 inches, which is pretty devastating for some cities that are unprepared. So keep an eye on the weather today. Give yourself some extra time, and then make sure you're watching it on Thursday. We'll have an update for you on Thursday morning. And of course, this is Stephanie Bell. I'm joined by Casey Burns this morning.
Hi, guys.
We've got Brian Hauswirth here.
Good morning,
John
all.
Marsh.
Yep. Good morning.
Producer Hannah is in the house.
Hello.
And we've got, Randy Tobler will be back tomorrow. He has the day off. Now, today we are expecting a big hearing in the Senate. This is on the Kansas City landfill bill. The bill is Senate Bill 739. And I'm going to just give a point of order here. That's a nerdy lawyer journalist point.
Oh, come on. A point of order.
But for everyone else out there, whether you're in whether you're in a government agency, whether you're also someone in media, or whether you're an elected, or whether you're in an association, if you were talking about a piece of legislation, please say the bill number. You can even link to it.
Amen.
That would help so many things. So we can all make sure we're talking about the same thing.
I always do link to the bill, just so you know. I want to make that, and sometimes it's a little tough because you have multiple bills. But yeah, I that's a pet peeve of mine. But we do it in generally in the copy, not as much on air.
Certainly.
I don't know that people know what Senate Bill 21 is, but on the online, definitely.
Yes.
Yeah,
and
that's one of those kind of deals where you think of the listener, and listeners don't know a Senate bill from a House bill. But boy, when you tell them what's in it, then you get their attention.
And they might want to go look it up and read it themselves. So
Absolutely.
This morning we're talking about Senate Bill 739. It is sponsored by Senator Searpoy. It is dealing with this KC landfill issue. And you might be wondering, I live in Mid-Mo. I don't care about a landfill in KC. Put it wherever you want. But these issues come up over and over and over again here in mid-Missouri. We've seen it in Ashland with Lakeside Ashland. It's kind of this NIMBY issue. If you're going to build something, how does it affect the residents around you? We've seen it in Columbia when they're talking about building some sort of homeless shelter.
Yes.
All the residents around. I mean, these land use issues are just perennial, and they're in every community across the state. And this one just so happens to be bubbling up enough where the state feels like they need to potentially take some action. So we have this hearing. Casey, what's going on in Kansas City?
Yeah, so this is going to be heard in the Senate today, assuming that they are still in session. I know the House just called for a technical session for the day due to weather. So Senate Bill 739 will be heard in local government and elections at noon today. And it will be a packed hearing room. The folks on both sides of this issue are incredibly passionate. There will be buses of people enduring the weather and coming into town to testify on behalf of this. So currently, under the current law, if you want to open a landfill in the city of Kansas City, you have to receive approval from an adjoining municipality if you're within a half mile from that municipality. Mm-hmm. What this bill is trying to do, and Senator Bratton also has the same language. It's not often you see Senator Searpoy and Senator Bratton on the same side of things, but
certainly
this is one example. This bill wants to change that radius to 1 mile. So I've been fortunate enough. I've seen this issue bubbling up. It came up at the end of last session. It's on the forefront this session. There's a lot of passion behind it. And so I've dove in and learned a little bit about the issue. Got a chance to talk to the folks who own the land where the proposed landfill site is. And they're like, hey, we're happy to comply with all current laws. We're happy to go through the permitting process. It takes years. There is a huge need in Kansas City. And they don't want any change. They're more than happy to comply with the law as is. Some folks in the area don't want a landfill in their neighborhood or in their, I don't know, not backyard, but half a mile
Across
away
the
from their backyard.
Yeah.
And so they've started a group called Kill the Fill. And if you drive through the area, you'll see their signs everywhere. They call the property owners by name. There's one sign that says, make sure the Monheisers don't become billionaires and things like that. So it's become a very contentious issue.
It really has. And you're right. It will be packed. And I would say you're right. It does have an impact because these type of issues do impact mid-Missouri. But you really throw the politics out the window because Mark Alford and Manuel Cleaver, who rarely agree on anything, are in agreement on this. It's really not a partisan issue. But the people that don't want KC, the landfill, they are worried about stench and they're worried about their property values. That's what they're arguing. I'm just going to read it's one sentence. This is what Senator Searpoy is proposing very quickly. It's one sentence. Literally, it's what it says. Under the Act, quote, the Department of Natural Resources shall not issue a permit for the operation of a solid waste disposal area located in the city of Kansas City without receiving approval from an adjoining municipality if such area is located within 1 mile of such municipality instead of 1/2 mile in the current law, end of quote. And unless they move it, I think they're talking about Lee Summit there. I mean, that would be my understanding of where this landfill's being proposed.
Down around Raymore.
Exactly. So that's just it. But there is this is very emotional for people, and it's a huge bill, not partisan at all. But it is that's a big. They need to figure this out.
Well, and I find it tough. I mean, because it does implicate property rights, and as a conservative, and I think we heard a little bit from Scott Fahn yesterday on this. Okay, so now Republicans have said you can't sell your land to anybody from China. So you can't do that. Now you can't sell your land, or, you can't buy this land that you intended to use for a landfill and use it as a landfill, if you're within the 1 mile. So now you can't, use your land as a landfill. And then you think these other restrictions, and I'm thinking like some of the farming restrictions with solar and with wind. Boone County put in some regulations. So if I'm a farmer and I want to take the utility money or the solar company's money and put something on my land, I don't always get that choice because the government has said now I can't. And so it's a tough issue, and I don't think it's going to come down to Republicans necessarily and Democrats, but I think it concerns me a little bit that where we see Republicans restricting people's ability to freely use their property. That's an interesting point, and I think for Caleb Browden here in Columbia, in mid-Missouri, who's the pro tem, it's not in his district, but obviously he's well aware of this, and he knows this thing could take a lot of floor time. I'm thinking if, in his perspective, that he probably is thinking they could hopefully work this out, figure out another place to build it. I don't know. It just seems to me that the opposition from those neighbors, just my seeing them before, they really don't want it in this location. So maybe they'll change it a little bit with the Searpoy thing. I don't know, but it's very unpopular. But I mean, some of these things, that's the whole point, is nobody wants a landfill in their next to them, right? So, but we have to have landfills.
The trash has to go somewhere, and
That's
why
true.
should, if someone has legally purchased property and wants to comply by the current law and open a legal business there, who are we as Republicans to say, oh no, we're gonna change this so that your specific business can't operate because your neighbors don't like it? Well, and the same issue, I mean, it came up here in mid-Missouri with Lakeside Ashland. We had neighbors that were close to that, and they said, we don't want this next to us. And I'm thinking, you live next to a highway and next to a property that's zoned general commercial. We have someone who bought the property knowing it was general commercial and wanted to build something. I think for folks, I mean, there's a price to live in the country. And, if you're next to the landfill or next to a property zone general commercial, you didn't pay that price to have country living. It's tough to tell people that. And you don't want too many changes, but it kind of is what it is. Yeah, and again, I'll leave the policy issue with you, Stephanie and Casey. I know that it's a tough issue, in the fact that the congressman from Raymore or Harrisonville and that area in Kansas City, Alford and Cleaver are working together on it is interesting. So we'll see.
Well, Alford lives right up the street from where the landfill's proposed. Close. He lives over Lake Winnebago, which is basically, that Lee Summit area.
But exactly. Do all the city mayors come together and everyone just say not it, and we dump it on somebody who doesn't show up? I mean, again, it has to go somewhere, and they're talking capacity issues now in the Kansas City area for landfills that are lots of them are 3/4 full. I think their study said last year that they talked about at the State House. And I think my understanding of this is only in the city of Kansas City does the law say you have to be a half mile. Everywhere else in the state, it's only 500 feet. Wow. So they're wanting to extend it to a mile. And these folks knew when they bought their land in Kansas City, they had a need to meet, and they were totally fine with complying with the half mile law. So interesting. Well, that hearing, again, takes place today, pending any sort of weather-related announcements, but is scheduled to take place today in the Senate at noon. So if you are interested, you might, I think you can actually tune in live to some of these hearings online, right? I know House hearings are online now. Okay. I'm not sure if Senate hearings are streamed or not. Well, either way, we'll have an update for you. Someone text us. I know y'all out there know. I know you can listen to the Senate floor debate online. All right, coming up next, I'm not even going to pretend like I'm going to be on time. It's going to be What's Hot with Hannah. Hannah, what do you got for us today?
A red carpet analysis from the Emmys, weirdly enough.
All right. The red carpet last night?
The Emmys were last night, apparently. Who knew, right? But the interesting thing is one of the cast members from RuPaul's Drag Race
Okay.
showed up wearing a Green Goblin costume with like the full-on special effects makeup. And so it almost looks like Shrek was on the red carpet last night at the Emmys with all of these, beautiful star-studded models in, gowns. And then there's just a Green Goblin. And I didn't really understand why. I haven't really found the answer to that question. But Stephanie, have you seen photos of this?
I have, and it's not like a cute green goblin.
No, it's not. It's got the full-on, witch's
gosh.
nose. Yeah.
I hadn't seen this. This
With
is
the
terrifying.
pointy ears, like the big.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Some like stray white hair. So maybe the whole point was so that we would talk about this person. Their stage name is Princess Poppy, which isn't that also a character in the movie Trolls?
It certainly is, and she's cute. She has like pink hair.
Yeah, this Princess Poppy went for a different look.
It's not good.
So if you want to stand out on your next red carpet, there you go.
Stage makeup it is.
Yeah.
Go as a troll. Go as a troll.
that's kind of my job, my hobby, and everything all rolled into one.
Well, and I said the first rule of inviting co-hosts is we have to like you. So we all like you here, and we're glad you joined us this morning. And now we are joined by State Senator Mary Elizabeth Coleman. Now, Senator, I want to ask you first, I saw on your Twitter last week that you endorsed President Trump. Now, he had a big night last night. So how are you feeling this morning about the Iowa caucuses?
Yeah, I'm feeling great, but not particularly surprised. I think that the people who are surprised this morning haven't been paying very close attention. The president performed the way we all expected him to, and it's time for the party to unite behind the president and get to defeating Joe Biden, right? Like, it's time. Enough of this nonsense.
Now, you are the only, we've been talking a lot here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri about Blaine Luetkemeier's retirement and who might be his replacement. Currently, I believe you are the only announced candidate, excuse me, for that race. So you came out of the gate really quickly. Tell us, why you made that announcement right off the bat and why you think you are the candidate for the 3rd Congressional.
Yeah, thanks. So, listen, I love our country. I love our state. And we need more unwavering conservatives who are willing to step up and fight against the radical left, who are really seeking to impose their socialist ideology on Missouri. So I'm running for Congress because we need to secure the southern border and really put a stop to this endless flow of illegal immigration. I'm running for Congress because we need to protect and defend human life. We've got to stand up for our daughters and the girls of our state by protecting women's sports. I'm running for Congress because we need to get back to the economic prosperity that we had under President Trump and reverse Biden economics, which has inflated the price of everything for Missouri families. I don't know why others are waiting to get into this fight. We need people who are unwavering conservatives, who have a passion for our country and who aren't going to wait around, who are ready to get to work.
Senator, we appreciate you joining us. I want to ask you a follow-up about the race, and I want to talk specifically about the county you represent, because you represent Jefferson County. Tons of labor people there, tons of union people. When I was growing up, they were all Democrats down there. You look at the legislative delegation, you're in the Senate, in the House as well, they are all Republican. So two-part question. A, what happened to turn that bright red, your district? And B, is President Biden popular in the district, considering that there are a lot of union members in that district?
Yeah, so I think we have to really look to President Trump to see an acceleration of the trend that was already taking place. Jefferson County has always been pro-life, has been pro-gun, and it's true, has been pro-union. But what we've seen is the national unions abandon their people. And so while the labor unions are still solidly with the left on paper, what you see are the labor union members, the guys who are part of the locals, they're voting Republican. And the reason they're voting Republican is because the labor unions haven't been able to convince them that the Democrats' politics and policies are the most important things. So, yes, they love their unions, but when they go to the ballot box, they're voting for life. They're voting to protect their Second Amendment rights. And they're voting for President Trump in overwhelming numbers because what we've seen is an America First policy is really what's going to move this country forward. They know it, and they show up.
I like to tell my labor friends and family, it's not your fault your party left you, but welcome in. We are a big tent party, and we'll take you all day long.
Well, and I got to tell you, my neighbor across the street from us, he's a member of a union, and they drive around and put Biden signs in their yard. And he came over to me and he says, don't worry, obviously I'm voting for you and all the other Republicans, but they go around and check and make sure we have these signs up. So the guys who are on the ground, who are doing the work, who are trying to provide for their families, yes, they support the unions, but they don't support the unions' policies nationally, and they don't support the candidates that they're backing.
Senator Coleman, we have talked a lot about the 3rd Congressional race on the air today and over the last week. We're expecting it's going to be a contentious primary, but so far you are the only legitimate candidate that is declared in the race. I know you've been working hard to make sure you get the funds in hand to get the name ID out there. Tell us a little bit about the success you've had on that front.
Yeah, so, people are looking for somebody who's going to be winning for conservative movement. They're wanting somebody who's going to be able to fight, who's going to be pragmatic, who's going to be out the door quickly. And a lot of times in campaigns, you see what we call efforting metrics. People want to talk about how many miles they've driven or how many people they've talked to. But at the end of the day, fundraising is one of those only tangible things that people can see before the ballots start coming in to see how people are doing. And we are getting tremendous success calling and asking for support for the campaign. We've raised over $160,000 in hard commitments from real people. This is not special interest money. This is neighbors and friends and family saying, you know what, we need people in D.C. who are going to fight for us and who, know what the right decisions are to make. And so we've been really excited about that effort that's taking place. And I'm really shocked. Everybody expects open primaries in the state of Missouri to be a scrum, to have a lot of a lot of candidates entering in. And I just am shocked that nobody else has decided to enter the race at this point.
Well, there's a lot of names that are floating around. And I think there's been a lot of talk on this show from some of our guests saying, well, and from some of the candidates who are at least thinking about it, saying, well, Luke DeMeyer's more of a mid-mo guy, and we need, there's seems to be this tension, and we've seen kind of two groups of names popping up, people like Senator Fitzwater from, the mid-Missouri area, and then folks like Nick Schroer from, and yourself from closer to the St. Louis area. And so what would you say to those voters that are in mid-Missouri who say, well, I really want a congressperson from mid-Missouri?
Yeah, I would say that this redistricting process has created kind of a funny-shaped map all the way from the lakes up, reaching up in St. Charles County or over North County, St. Louis. It is a funny-shaped map, and I get if I'm from Boone or Cole County, I'd be pretty annoyed that it isn't a mid-mo-centric district. And so what I will say is that when I win the Republican nomination and then when I win in the general election, that we're going to keep an office in mid-Missouri. Jefferson City is going to keep that office there. We're going to make sure that we're in the district, really across the district. We're going to be in mid-Missouri a lot. And you're going to have a really accessible congressman who cares not just about one part of the district, but about the entire part, the entirety of the district. And so I'm really looking forward to getting to know and to kind of reach out to everybody, no matter what county they're in. We're going to be there, and we're going to make sure that the entire district gets well represented, not just, St. Charles or not just Marys County or wherever. If you're part of the district, you're going to know us, you're going to know my office, you're going to have access to my cell phone. That's always the way that we have campaigned. Every race I've been in has been a competitive primary, and I think people need to know that this is not my seat, and it's not anybody else who's looking at joining the seat. It's all of our seats, and it's important that we have somebody who recognizes that we're just taking our turn to do the best for our community.
We are speaking with Senator Mary Elizabeth Coleman.
Senator, we've talked to you past sessions and all, and the Chaos Caucus by any other name, Conservative Caucus, Freedom Caucus, as they're calling themselves this year. I think your line you used when you were on with us once before was a clash of personalities. Are we going to see another year of that at the State House?
Absolutely. Listen, we have a situation right now where there are a lot of people who come to public service looking for a platform to get on to X or Twitter, people who want to run to the nearest bank of cameras instead of trying to solve problems for the people of Missouri. And what I have always been focused on is, I'm not a part of this caucus or that caucus. I will work with anybody and everybody who wants to get the job done. We need a consistent conservative, somebody who knows how to get to work. And that's why I've jumped into this congressional race, and that's what you'll see continuing in my service in the State House this session.
So if you could wave a magic wand and pass one thing, and one thing could soar through both chambers and get signed by the governor, what would be your top pick?
Education freedom. When we look at where the state is and where we could be, we are failing our kids. Parents are the ones who are best positioned to know what's right for their kids. We spend more and more money every time. I've served for 5 years in the State House, and every year we increase our funding for public education, and we continue to see declined results. And the reason why is because parents aren't the ones who are able to make that decision about what's best for their kids. So I would love to see an expansion of our education savings accounts so that every child in the state, no matter where they live, and get access to a world-class education that their mom and dad think is what's right for them.
Senator, a quick question about next week, because it'll be a huge speech, the governor's final State of the State address. It's a week from tomorrow, Wednesday. It'll be at 3 o'clock. You'll be walking into the House chamber along with the Senate before a rare joint session when the governor goes up to that podium. Dean Plocher and Lieutenant Governor Kehoe will be behind him. When he goes up to that podium, what would you really like to see him say? What do you want to hear from him?
I'd like to hear about us reining in spending. We have been on a spending spree as a state like I've never seen. We have so much more money than we've ever had as a state, and we continue to spend at a high rate. And I just would love us, rather than talking about what the state is going to buy, what we're going to rein in and what we're going to stop spending money on. I think I'm going to be disappointed. I don't think that's what I'm going to hear, but that's what I would love to hear the governor talk about.
Well, we appreciate you joining us here today. I've been running late all morning, so I've got to run here. Hannah, I'm getting the eye roll from Hannah because I was especially late for What's Hot with Hannah, but we appreciate you joining us and plan to check back in with you as you continue your campaign for Congressional District 3.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, and we did get an update from a listener in that if you want to tune into the Senate committee hearings, the audio is available online, so you can do that. So coming up next, we have John. He will be doing And That Would Be All, except for this.
1,100-page document report that says we're going to institute humor-free zones. So here's a few we found that you won't see anymore. Who hates speeding tickets? Raise your right foot. Here's one I like. It says, get your head out of your apps.
Oh.
I like it.
Life is a highway. I want to ride it with a seatbelt on.
Nice.
Hey, the guy in front of you, half and half is for coffee. Pick a lane. Hey, bobblehead, quit looking at your phone, but the all-time winner is, with references to National Lampoon, Cousin Eddie says the Twitter is full. Put down your darn phone. And now you know the rest of that story.
I love those. And it's so sad that the Highway Administration is cracking down on those, because I actually think most of the time I just ignore the signs.
Exactly.
But when I'm driving through and I know, the place that I know that does a really good job is Tennessee. I always see the funniest highway signs in Tennessee, so I'm always paying attention. I'm like, ooh, what are they going to have up now? And Ashland just had some, and I think around Christmas they said something, there was some reference, because we were having reindeer in town for an event, and they said it was something about Rudolph's visiting, slow down. I don't know, but it was cute the way that it was done. And I thought it just that little moment of joy in your day of yes, traffic sucks, but at least you can make me laugh.
Well, the press release from the Federal Highway folks, it said, these are serious and these aren't supposed to be humorous. And I'm going, well, if they're humorous and people read them, aren't you accomplishing what you're trying to do?
Leave it to the federal government to steal my joy.
I still wonder how they're going to enforce this. Because think about how many of those signs there are in the U.S.
Well, and we had a snafu here with Wake Up Mid-Missouri with a sign that someone put Let's Go Brandon on, if you recall, I believe.
For the homecoming parade?
Yeah, at the encouragement of someone that we know. But then
used to know.
Yeah, used to know. No, but I think about, too, I always get a tickle. I forget where we were driving, but I was like, oh, Barrel Bob. And I don't see Barrel Bob that often.
No, me neither.
He's down, I think he's down by the Roachport Bridge, down in that area. And I still I see him and then I shout out, I'm like, oh, it's Barrel Bob, because he's just not around as much. He used to be downtown some more. And does anyone know where he is right now? Or are there multiple?
Look out, the feds may have pulled the highway funding on Barrel Bob.
That's what I'm thinking. Is Barrel Bob, because he's fun, is he now outlawed as well?
Probably.
Barrel Bob done barreled his last Bob.
I'd be sad if he went away. I think we need to call our MoDOT folks and say, we need you to, where's the Attorney General on this? We need to push back against the Biden administration on outlawing fun. And if they're going after Barrel Bob, I think we need a campaign hashtag Save Barrel Bob.
Or where's Waldo? Where's Barrel Bob?
Seriously, I think this is a bad thing for the federal government to do. And of course, we also heard this morning that apparently Biden's not the only one who's going after fun, but also the Canadians, which are they fun anyway? I don't really think so. But now they are outlawing in certain circumstances on certain hills, you can no longer ride your toboggan and go sledding in Canada on certain hills, which is just, ridiculous, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yes, the government has a role for basic public safety, but to what extent are we? Do we tell people? I guess some governments do, that you can't have so much sugar, you can't buy a certain size soda. Where does it end?
Where does it end?
Jackie texted us and said, "What happened to freedom of speech?"
Poor Barrel Bob, R.I.P. I feel like there's a whole Facebook page here that will come about that. And we should just let the free market dictate, which is why, I think in general, I'm in favor of the free market. But apparently Casey was playing my co-hosting role very well as she put on her makeup for the cameras. And I regularly do. But the free market is failing me here because there's a new, I think it's in the Journal article out about how the dewy skin look is out. And now Taylor Swift is the new face of you have to have matte makeup. with guest co-host Casey Burns. We're having a lot of fun. If you missed our interviews earlier this morning, we talked to Chris Arps at 6:30, and then we just spoke with Senator Mary Elizabeth Coleman. She is the only announced candidate for the 3rd Congressional District race. You can always catch those later on our podcast. Look for Wake Up Mid-Missouri on demand. You can also catch us live. You can watch us do our makeup early in the morning, but you can also watch the faces we make when someone says something silly. But we are live on Facebook and YouTube, so we encourage you to check that out. And of course, again, you can watch it live or you can check it out if you happen to miss it. Of course, we are hoping that you are all taking it slow this morning. I know my drive out of Ashland was very slow, and then into Columbia very slow. How was Jefferson City this morning, Casey?
Jefferson City was completely covered when I was leaving town at about 5:15.
Right.
But Starbucks was open.
Okay.
Like, it's very important to note. I wasn't sure if
Get
I
your
was going to
priorities
survive.
in order.
Yes.
Hey, look, if I'm going to be somewhere at 6 a.m., there's a bare minimum number of shots of espresso that have to be consumed first.
That's the biggest bummer about coming in as early as we do is there's no places open.
There are not a lot of places open, but if you are headed out, you might just give yourself a little bit of extra time. I know even at 5 in the morning, MoDOT did some incredible work, and Highway 63 was looking quite nice, but other areas might not be. So give yourself some extra time. But now we are joined by Gregg Keller. And Gregg, I think this might be your first appearance on the program, at least since I have joined. Now, Gregg is with Atlas Strategy Group, but you probably actually know him from Twitter. He has a fire Twitter account, but a lot of experience in politics. And I think I saw on your Twitter account, this might have been the first time you weren't on the ground for a caucus last night.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out, and thanks for having me this morning, I was trying to figure out exactly where I was supposed to get my Iowa caucus results, because I think every caucus for the last 10 or 15 years, I've been in some presidential campaign war room. So I was a little bit lost last night trying to figure out exactly how I get Iowa caucus results when not in a presidential war room.
It must have felt good, though, because you're back from a big trip. You were just in Israel, so we want to get to your time there. But how are you feeling in general, just having been so involved in presidential politics, knowing the stakes in Missouri this year? How are you feeling after seeing a big win for Trump last night?
It was interesting because I think a lot of the more leftist portions of the Republican Party, kind of the never-Trumpers as well as the media, I think they were trying to set a really high bar for President Trump and say, if he doesn't win by 30 points, if he doesn't get at least 50%, then this will be a huge loss for him, and the nomination is going to be wide open. Obviously, the caucus goers in Iowa felt very differently about that. The president did win by about 30%. The president did easily cross 50 percentage points in an 8-way primary. So, it's going to be interesting to see how things go on into New Hampshire. I was glad to see that someone like an Asa Hutchinson, someone like a Chris Christie, both of them got about 0.2 or 0.1%. Both of those are vanity campaigns. I hope and expect that they'll be dropping out of the race pretty soon. But the president leaves Iowa in a very strong position.
Gregg, I know you talk a lot and you have a big focus on federal politics, but you are a Missouri native and you're very involved here in the state also. If you could pick one race that you are either watching or involved with that you are most excited about for 2024, what would it be?
I think it's really hard for conservative Republicans like myself who live in the greater St. Louis area or mid-Missouri or Jeffco or somewhere like that. I think it's very hard to not be extremely excited about the congressional candidacy of Mary Elizabeth Coleman. She has been one of the most conservative members, one of the most free market members of the Missouri State Senate and the Missouri House before that. She has got absolutely bulletproof social conservative credentials. She's running to replace Blaine Luetkemeyer in Missouri's 3rd congressional district. Very conservative Catholic woman, I believe 6 kids, strong pro-lifer. I'm really excited about her race, but it's going to be a long primary to see who wins that thing.
All right. We are speaking with Gregg Keller. Now, Gregg, where can people find you on Twitter?
It is at @RGreggKeller, RGREGGKELLER.
Gregg, I know you were very involved in Mitt Romney's campaign and all. And looking back at how that went with some of the, accusations that were leveled at him about how the campaign was handled, like the line they used about Mitt was he wasn't leading the Republican Party and it led him. Anything takeaways there for Donald Trump on how that campaign was handled?
Yeah, I the first campaign I worked on for Mitt was the 2008 campaign. And believe it or not, I mean, we ran Mitt as the most conservative person in that cycle. We wanted him to be the conservative alternative to John McCain. He certainly was at that iteration of Mitt's political career, at least, certainly more conservative than John McCain was. And I think would have been a better candidate to go up against Barack Obama than John McCain was. I was really disappointed as someone who moved across the country to work for Mitt Romney back in 2007. I was really disappointed to see the extent to which later on in his career he tried to cater to, kind of the more liberal elements of the Republican Party. I think at some point he kind of left the party. And I think it's politicians, I think it's people like Donald Trump who really picked up on that, who picked up on the fact that Republican primary voters are tired of voting for Republicans who, as soon as they get into office, abandon the most important core tenets of our party. So I think in a lot of ways, candidates like Mitt Romney circa 2012 really paved the way for the new kind of populist revolution that thankfully we've ushered in for the Republican Party.
Now, Donald Trump has told us that he has already picked, or I think people close to him have said he's already picked his VP candidate. As someone who's been around presidential campaigns for a while and, is familiar with the field of potentials, who are you hoping either by, let's start with, categories. Are you hoping it's going to be a woman? Do you think that matters? And then, if you can name an individual, who are you hoping that he might pick?
I think that President Trump, first of all, is going to rely first and only on his gut on this. He is not going to take advice from advisors on this, from consultants on this. President Trump is a man that on the big issues makes up his own mind on these things. I think it's possible he's going to pick a woman. I also think it's possible he's going to pick maybe a black Republican. My own personal favorite would be Byron Donalds. He's a congressman from Florida. Very bright, fantastic conservative black congressman from Florida. I think he would be great. Listen, when you look at the election results from last cycle, in both the black community and the Hispanic voting community, the Republican Party under Donald Trump has made significant gains. Somewhere between 20 and 25% of those votes go for Donald Trump in presidential elections. I would expect to see the president be very interested in maybe trying to pump that number up. And I think someone like Byron Donalds would be exactly what the doctor ordered. I hope that's what he does.
All right. Now, you just got back from a big trip. You were in Israel. I don't even know how long you were there, but what took you to Israel? How long were you there? Tell us what you were doing there.
Yeah, I'm on the National Council of AIPAC, which is the primary lobbying organization in the United States that works to promote the very special relationship between America and Israel. I help lobby members of Congress, help them raise money, help them with advocacy work, not just in Missouri, but throughout the country. We spent a few nights in Tel Aviv. We spent a couple nights in Jerusalem. We did go down to the Gaza border. We visited one of the kibbutzes that Hamas overran on October 7. It was an amazing trip, but it was very intense to see what Hamas and those terrorists backed by Iran did, to see the rape rooms, to see the shelled and the destroyed and the burned down villages, kibbutzes, military installations. What they did on October 7 was nothing short of barbaric, and it's very sobering to see those things in person.
I can't imagine. We heard from members of Congress who saw some of the tape in those rooms, and they said, they were forever changed. But to see that in person, I'm sure it's something that will stick with you. Now that you're, back stateside and working in that lobbying organization, beyond funds, like what are the priorities for AIPAC?
Well, the most important thing that we need to achieve here in Missouri is we need to get Cori Bush out of the U.S. Congress. Cori Bush
Amen.
is a Jew. Cori Bush is she's a Jew hater. She's a Holocaust enthusiast. She bends over backwards to fund, help, and assist the terrorists of Hamas. She does not like Jewish people. She has someone running against her in the Democrat primary, Wesley Bell, with whom I agree on almost zero. But Wesley Bell, at the very least, does not hate Jewish people. He does not want to see a second Holocaust against the Jewish people, which I believe is what Cori Bush and her ilk in the squad want to see, and all of their votes in Congress are bent towards that. So that's going to be, my top Israel-facing political priority this next cycle. We have a real chance to get a Jew hater out of the U.S. Congress, and we need to do it.
And if there was, focusing back on the state legislature and with an eye toward the elections in the fall, if there is one issue that the state legislature that can tackle that would actually help Republicans in the fall, what would it be for you?
Education reform, education reform, education reform. All the states surrounding Missouri, whether it's Oklahoma, whether it's Arkansas, whether it's Kansas, all of our Midwestern and Southeastern states are passing education reform on huge bases. Unfortunately, we have rural Republicans, and I say Republicans in quotation marks. We have rural air quote Republicans in Missouri who have decided that they are going to carry the water for the teachers' unions, for Randy Weingarten, for the people who are pushing smut in our schools, for the people who shut down our schools during the pandemic, completely unnecessary. And we need to take that fight head on behalf of our kids. Our schools here in Missouri are failing. We need to give our families and our kids more education options to go to schools of their choice, maybe parochial schools. So I would say education savings accounts, any type of education reform, we got to keep pace with the other states that are way ahead of us on this.
I can't agree more. Well, thanks so much for joining us this morning, Gregg Keller. Again, find him on Twitter at @RGreggKeller. He is a great follow. And we hope you will join us again here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri real soon.
Love to. Thanks for having me.
All right. Up next, we're going to be close to on time for the morning bell as Hannah gives me the eye roll. But we have to have this debate. I know a lot of us had it this weekend. To peacock or not If you are headed out this morning and a little bit later than normal, but just give yourself some extra time.
Kind of like what's hot with Hannah, right?
Yep.
A little later than normal.
Just barely. But yeah, in the cities, roads were covered slightly. It's cold, so if we get snow, it's going to stick, folks. And keep your eyes on the weather because we are expecting more of it on Thursday. But right now we're watching the markets, and they are all in the red, approaching 0.5%. Dow, S&P, NASDAQ, all sitting about 0.4% down this morning. So keep an eye on the market. Not apparently a good morning. Shouldn't they be soaring with Donald Trump up in the Iowa caucuses? I would have thought we would have seen some positive reactions from the market.
I think folks are starting to get really nervous about the inflation, the Bidenomics or whatever we're calling it. You ask the current president and the economy's in great shape, but it takes the average person $11,000 more a year to maintain their cost of living as to last year. So I think that's starting to scare business owners and investors.
I think certainly, and we saw that with all of the mass tech layoffs already we've seen at the beginning of this year. Well, we are asking the question which many people were asking over the weekend: to peacock or not to peacock?
Oh, come on, man.
Who paid for the streaming service? Anybody in this room?
I happily mooched off of the in-laws.
That's what I did. I went to my mom's house. She had Peacock, and I said, I'm going to find someone with it. You visited people who had it.
Yeah, we watched with friends. So my mom did have to break down and get my dad a Peacock account, and I heard all about it. But I myself did not have to pay for one.
Well, and
Me either. I listened on the radio.
There you go. It's on our sister station, right?
On KWS, yeah.
Oh, yeah, there we go. It is on KWS. So, okay, but Peacock, it was a good day for them, actually, because they made Peacock paid NFL $110 million. And so they paid a pretty penny to the NFL to get the exclusive rights to the game. Huge. But at the same time, they hit number 1 overall on the App Store because everyone was trying to download. Any idea? Ever. Yeah. And their search volume on Google was twice as high as it has ever been any other time in history. So clearly, like, if you're trying to pay for marketing, that's about as good as you can get.
Yeah, it worked, but I am so tired of this. Okay, I want to watch the game today. Who's airing it? Where's it at? How can I find it? Like, come on, guys.
The Wall Street Journal wrote an article, and the title is "Peacock Game: The NFL's Digital Butt Fumble." Is that a new? is that a new word, or is that a word I'm just unfamiliar with?
Like the tush push.
The tush push butt fumble. Is that something?
Like, yeah. What even is that?
Well, apparently that's what the Wall Street Journal it's interesting coming from the Wall Street Journal, and they pointed out in the article because they themselves are behind a paywall. But they just kind of are with you, John and Casey, in just that, like, we, cut the cord. But now, apparently for some, you have to have YouTube. For some, you have to have something else. For this, you have to have Peacock. And my real question for Peacock is, yeah, it worked once, but how many people are going to go in and, what is the monthly subscription? Like $5 or $10? You pay it for the month and then you cancel it, hopefully. And so is it a long-term play for them? I don't think so.
Wow, I hadn't thought about the butt fumble in years. That was a deal back in the day with the Jets and the Patriots. And the one guy, I think, on the Jets ran into his own teammate's butt and fumbled the ball.
See, thank you for providing that background, because in the studio, Stephanie, Casey, and I have been going, what the heck's a butt fumble? Like, where did they come up with this term? But it's a real thing.
It's like when I remember, like, when I was pregnant, and you used to, when you like try to scooch by people and you turn to the side and then you realize, like, you're wider on the side than you are. And, like, yeah, I would,
as long as you recover the ball, it's all good.
Yeah. I would bump into a lot of things, both on the front and the back when I was preggo. So I think I fumbled a lot.
They said Peacock averaged 23 million viewers.
Wow.
For the game. And then they said after they did the final numbers, it was like 26 or 27 million.
But so big news for Peacock, but I think all I saw for the NFL was hate. So if you're the NFL, do you make this play again? That's
a good point. I don't know. The numbers may bear it out, though. Well, look at the Thursday night NFL games that are all on Prime.
Now we're getting text messages at 874-9390 about the butt fumble.
Oh, okay. Okay, we're gonna have to read these probably in leftovers because our text line is lighting up. A lot of people are saying we only are getting Peacock Tobler this morning with guest co-host Casey Burns.
Good morning, everyone.
Randy will be back tomorrow, and since, I'm the expert on sports ball, we figured we'd talk a little bit more about it. But no, we did get some big news that is, I guess, Missouri-related-ish. Hannah, what are we hearing about the Kelsey brothers?
The NFL has put out on Twitter that the oldest Kelsey brother, Jason, is retiring. He announced his teammates after last night's pretty abysmal game where they lost to the Buccaneers. They're done for the season. And so the Eagles are losing Jason Kelsey as center after this season. So.
Maybe he knows something we don't. Maybe Travis is putting a ring on it and Taylor's just going to fund the whole fam.
No, well, you never know. We don't have inside information, but Hannah's right. Adam Schefter first reported that story from ESPN. Quoting, he must have sources within he's quoting people that were in the locker room. And
when they had the camera on Jason last night, he was hugging the defensive line coach and all, and he looked pretty
bummed.
He looked like he was ready to go.
And he's 6-time Pro Bowler, but I want to say, Hannah could correct me, I want to say he's 35 or 36 years old. I mean, that's kind of old for a center. It really is for a center. And he made the comment about a year ago. I remember in an interview, he made the comment that he wants to be able to get down on the ground and be able to sit with his kids and play with them. And he talked about the pain, getting hit all the time. If he's a center, he's in there with nose guards, I can only imagine. So, but the Eagles, just a really disappointing finish.
Certainly.
Yeah, Hannah had it in her to tell us that 36 was old. Dead stop.
But no. I meant, what I meant was for an NFL center.
Yeah.
But not for, just a regular old person.
Yeah.
So thanks for that. All right. Well, something else that has come up recently are these, we know today is a big fundraising deadline in Missouri. Casey, you are a fundraiser. We, I think, previously asked you, what's the bottom line number on a state Senate race? What was the answer? It was $100,000?
I think I told you 320.
320. Okay. That's a lot of money. Okay. So, and then I think as we approach this new congressional race, that was kind of my question. I've heard all sorts of numbers being thrown around. We heard a little bit from Mary Elizabeth Coleman this morning about how much money she's raised so far or expects to raise. I dug around a little bit, and I know, it's hard to kind of get to the right race. I know, so looking at what Mark Alford spent in 2022, spent about almost $1 million, $980,000. The last time Congressman Luetkemeyer ran, 2008, he was actually running from 2009, if you recall, and Onder was in that race. And that race, Luetkemeyer spent about $2.7 million. Onder spent $700,000. Luetkemeyer, of course, came out on top there. But what, as folks approach this race, jumping from, we talk about Senator Fitzwater, jumping from that state Senate race where you're at the $100,000 to $300,000 mark, what are people going to need to make a play for Mo3?
Well, that number, I think, is dictating why a lot of folks are showing hesitancy on getting into this race. I think we're looking at minimum about 1.2 million. Somewhere between 1.2 and 2.5, I would say is realistically what you're going to need. And it's very intimidating. It's hard to raise money. It's hard to raise real dollars from real people. And in an open seat primary, you're not going to have a lot of outside parties, interest groups, PACs get involved until right up into the primary when they see kind of where the polling lays, who the front runner is. Then some money will start pouring in. But it's an intimidating factor, certainly.
Well, the money that we've seen spent, over the years, you talk about $1.5 million to $2.5 million on the House side. Gosh, what does senators spend? $10 million, $15 million?
Oh, gosh, we could pull up the numbers from the 22 U.S. Senate race, but I guess
it's way up there.
I guess there was probably $15 million spent on the race, on the primary as a whole when it was said and done.
Yeah, exactly. I think I'm glad you guys both mentioned, and this ties in with what I've talked about with Bonne Terre and how I brought up Jefferson County with her. If you go back to 2008, this will be hard for our listeners to remember because it's been a long time ago, but not that long ago. Blaine Luetkemeyer beat Judy Baker by 9,000 votes. It was a pretty close race. Very close race. At that time, a lot of those rural northeast counties, northeast Missouri, voted Democrat. In the media, particularly our media in Missouri, they always talk about suburban voters going for the Democrats, and it's true. It's a trend that's troubling for Republicans, I'm sure. But you rarely hear them point out that the counties that used to be Democratic have gone bright red. And for the Democrats to have any hope at all, Casey, if Crystal Quaid or if somebody else is going to win this race, Carla May or whoever's on the ballot for Senate, they've got to be able to at least cut into the margin in the rural areas and hope for a big enough vote count in those areas. But these counties like Bonne Terre, Jefferson County, Northeast Missouri, they're overwhelmingly red. And the only other thing really quickly that grabbed my attention that Mary Elizabeth Coleman said in that interview, and it caught me off guard. She said there was a union member that lived on her street that had a Biden signs or Democratic signs and basically said, "I'm going to vote for you. Don't worry." They check on me to make sure I have these signs up. That really caught me off guard.
I'm not surprised at all.
I'm not surprised. I think the teachers' unions, like here locally, probably make sure that you have the right Facebook photo or whatever they're supporting. I'm sure they quote unquote require certain things of you.
My dad's a fifth generation tradesman, bricklayers local number 1, and I can tell you back in the 70s and 80s, a lot of those union members that I knew in North County, very, very union area, voted Republican, no doubt. So I'm not surprised. But the unions did not do that. They did not check on, and they didn't do that. But the unions were in those days, they were concerned about safety, worker safety. I never once heard any of them talk about politics. They didn't like right to work. That was something they didn't like. But outside of that, it was really about safety. But this must be a different era. That grabbed my attention that she said someone was checking to see if he had a yard sign in his yard.
And it totally depends which union, which organization, where they are, where they're based at. A lot of our Missouri labor folks are actually dictated by their boards in Chicago or far larger, more liberal cities. So that plays a part also.
I was a union guy as a young guy in high school because it was a union shop I worked at with plasterers and cement masons union and all, and I was a kid, but I sure don't remember anybody coming around saying, "Here's a yard sign you got to put up in mom and dad's yard." You know,
it wasn't and there were union members, to be clear, that I remember that back Jimmy Carter when I was a kid and Walter Mondale, but there were a lot. I mean, the media called them Reagan Democrats. I mean, Ronald Reagan didn't get the union bosses' support, but he had a lot of support from, I don't know how many. I remember a lot where I was growing up that voted for Ronald Reagan. I'm sure it made a difference. But I thought that was interesting. The other thing that she said that caught me, I think is important for news, is she said she'd keep the office in Jeff City, Mary Elizabeth Coleman, if she wins. I think that's significant.
I do, and I think we just saw Congressman Alford here doing the grand opening of his office in mid-Missouri, and we've seen him a lot since he was elected in person here in the studios, at the state fair, around the state, and I've been really pleased, and I hope whoever and same for Congressman Luetkemeyer. I've actually been on a tour with him in Ashland before, and I know we've seen him quite a bit, and he's in district, so I hope we get the same treatment from whoever replaces him. Now we've heard some of the commentary I heard last night about DeSantis was just the amount of money, because it's not just about how much money you raise, but it's also about your burn rate. And people were saying, he's neck and neck with Nikki Haley, but he has spent so much more money than her and had so many more resources. Like, if you do the math, like how much did he pay per vote or, per percentage, because he's just spent an incredible amount of money. And so I think as we're looking at the Missouri races and we're looking at those fundraising numbers come in, there's important numbers. There's, and some candidates will be out there and say, I raised $1 million. But really, there's one really important line on that form, and it's called your COH, your cash on hand number, because that's basically your bottom line. It's not just that you raised $1 million. If you raised $1 million, but you spent $1 million, you're going to be handicapped next quarter on what you can actually buy or do. So, that's another important number to watch, Casey, right?
That's right. And donors care a lot about everything you buy, everything you spend, everything you raise through your candidate committee or an affiliated PAC is online. That's public information at the end of each quarter. Donors care a lot about investing in folks who are spending their money wisely. A good example or a bad example, a bad burn rate that we're going to see today is Committee for Liberty, the PAC that supports Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft's gubernatorial campaign, raised $110,000 last quarter and spent $98,000. So almost a net zero there for a PAC, which is generally easier to raise large dollars into.
And that's because you can raise unlimited funds for PACs. And so we would expect, being in the height of a gubernatorial race, we would expect much more than that. And I don't think we're just picking on Ashcroft here. I haven't seen the numbers out of Eigel or Kehoe's campaign this morning yet. Have you?
I haven't seen Kehoe's yet. I have some intel from the Eigel campaign.
You have an affiliation there.
I have an affiliation. Yes. They have raised over $600,000 for the quarter.
Wow.
So that's candidate committee and PAC combined. But seeing that Jay Ashcroft's PAC raised $100,000, I can't imagine his candidate committee did $500,000 to compete with Eigel there.
It'll be interesting to see that, and then that governor's race is going to be huge, and the Republican will be the front runner. Whoever wins that nomination will. But Mary Elizabeth Coleman, there's something else about her that I remember that's worth mentioning. She knocked off a very popular incumbent, a guy named Mike Revis back in 2017, who was considered a rising star in the Democrat. And they actually are pretty good friends, don't agree politically, but they get along really well. But when Casey, you might remember this, when she won that open seat for the Senate, in the primary, she beat the Speaker of the House, Rob Vescovo was in that race, Dan Scholl, who was a very popular Republican from Imperial, and Shane Roden from Cedar Hill. All three in the General Assembly, she beat them all. I mean, I have to say, she is a formidable candidate. Pretty young, I'd say.
Young.
She's young.
I think she's close to my age.
Standard,
she's,
but
young. But I mean, she's comfortable doing interviews. She even said she'll give out her cell phone. But I mean, for her to beat the Speaker of the House, and it was a pretty clean race. I don't remember any, and I don't even remember who the Democrat was in that race. But she is, she's definitely going to be formidable. I think the only weakness, it would not be a weakness about her, does she have the name ID being all the way over in Arnold for people here? And that's something that probably they'd have to address.
Well, much to my dismay, the Speaker actually didn't run in that race.
Oh, he did?
Because I would have taken so much delight in
he did file, though, or at least he talked about
having an attempt in beating him. But no, Jeff Rorta ran there. And she won pretty handedly.
Yes, she did.
It'll all come down to how hard she works and how much money she raises to get that name ID throughout Central Missouri. I think she's comfortable in Jeff City, has no problem being around Mid-Mo, is already making the rounds and has some really legitimate allies in the Central Missouri area that are helping her build her network. So I know she's a friend, client, and all those disclaimers. But I know her work ethic, and I think you'll be impressed with her candidacy.
In Vescovo, I don't even think he's doing anything anymore right now. I think he's out of politics, as far as I know.
Well, he's rumoring this race, jumping into this race as well. So we'll see.
All right, we got to take a break here. Coming up next, we've got your leftovers, and I think our local public schools could take a page out of
Yep, they were lined up in the eye, and they were going to do a fake handoff to one of the running backs, and he promptly ran into the
brown
buttocks
eye.
of his of his very large offensive lineman, and the rest was history. That
All
was
right.
the end of the Jets thing.
We got to bring that